Welcome to the 5th episode of Maldorma TV. I am Magnus Ahlberg.
And I'm Tobias Ahlberg.
In the previous 2 episodes, we talked about 2 very different journeys that we made with psychedelics. Where within the first one had a very powerful divine experience where we could feel our own divine nature, basically. And we were just blown away about that experience. And then in the last episode, we talked about a very different experience where I remember I had this feeling of complete hopelessness, and it was a really tough ride for sure.
Yeah, and I experienced, I had like a near-death experience where I thought I was actually going to die, and turned out I didn't, gladly. But it was a really heavy experience that after this, we kind of had to just take a few weeks and some time just to get perspective of what had happened.
It felt like the bad experience kind of pulled the rug under my feet, at least after the first positive experience, and it was a very humbling experience, and we felt we needed to recover basically and discuss what happened.
Yeah, but I think the experience in itself turned out to be a really great experience in the end.
Yeah.
But it was such a heavy experience that I think we just needed the rest.
Yeah.
And but the curiosity was still there. Seeing how we have had this really amazing experience that we talked about in the 3rd episode.
Yeah.
It was still, I at least still had this curiosity of, I didn't want it to end there.
Oh no, not at all. And we decided to, after some time, explore these worlds one more time.
Yeah. And I'm quite glad that we did.
Yeah, it was all of the good things kind of was ahead of us, I think.
Yeah, so I think that was a small test to see if we would continue on this journey.
Yeah.
So, but we did. And on the next, when we tried it the next time, I remember that after a while, I just got into this really amazing state where kind of how we described in the 3rd episode about feeling this bliss and just being in this total peace and this energy just in the room. I could feel that in a constant state throughout the entire evening. Yeah. And it was like I could walk around where before I would just have this small experience of it.
Yeah.
Now I was able to walk around in it. And I remember, I think that was the time where we introduced watermelons to our experiences.
Oh, dear God. Watermelons.
Yeah, I just remember, I think we were just in this beautiful state of awareness that was just there. And we could walk around it, just basically doing anything. And I think we asked ourselves, what are we supposed to do in this awareness?
Yeah, it kind of resembled the episode that I described in the later part of episode 3.
Yeah.
Where I had this kind of breakthrough experience again, but it wasn't as intense, and I could walk around it in this state of awareness as well.
Yeah.
But now it happened again, and I think more to you during this experience than to me.
I think it left a bigger impression for me because it was the first time it happened that I was in a constant state of this awareness.
Yeah.
So I just remember eating watermelon, and the watermelon tasted like it was the most terrific fruit that I've ever tasted. And the music, when you're listening to it, it was just as beautiful just as before as well. And I just remember it as just being in this unconditional love, if you will.
Yeah, and when you are in this state of awareness, you really appreciate everything just as it is. For instance, the watermelon, it tastes. You really focus on how good it tastes, and you don't need anything else except that watermelon.
Or you're just so present in just whatever you do.
Yeah,
and you just appreciate it fully.
Enjoying every bite, and also you enjoy everyday things like watching around in the room and or looking out the window, everything becomes so
Yeah, I just
beautiful.
Yeah, I just remember this moment where I was sitting there eating the watermelon, and we had, I think it was Sigur Rós playing in the background, or just some beautiful music, and I was looking out the window and I could see the sea and the trees and the sky, and it was I think it was a summer evening, so it was
Yeah.
like really beautiful outside, and I just, at that moment, it was the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. It was just so beautiful.
Yeah, and it's a really, I really love this stage of awareness that
Yeah.
you can tune into during these experiences when you just are. And quite often nowadays we get into this state awareness after the intense part.
Yeah.
But as you said, this was the first time we could walk around in it. Well, I did it one time. That experience I described, the Nirvana experience in episode 3, but basically it was kind of close to each other, and
Yeah.
we were both blown away by this.
Yeah, I mean, being in this state of awareness, I don't know how to explain it in a good way. I think the word that popped into my head when I was sitting in this state of awareness is like, I'm in heaven.
Yeah.
It's perhaps an exaggeration, I don't know, but that's the word that came to mind. It felt like being in heaven. Everything was just wonderful.
And you are also very present during this. You don't feel the need for anything else than what is.
Yeah, that's good point, because all these questions that you usually have, or all the things that you ponder upon, if it's the existing everyday problems that you have in life, they're just gone. They just vanish.
And you do not have any feelings like restlessness or anything like that. You're just in the now, appreciating it maximum, pretty much.
Yeah.
And whatever you do, just walking around is bliss. Eating is bliss. Just chilling.
Yeah.
It's bliss. So you can't get enough of it. That's for sure.
Yeah, and
That kind of experience.
I remember a funny thing made me really like ponder upon what was happening. I was sitting there eating the watermelon, and I was taking a bite, and I looked down in the watermelon.
Yeah.
And I could see a face in the watermelon.
Yeah, I remember that.
And it was like a smiling monk looking at me, and I think I actually said to you while I was eating, there's a monk in this smell.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I just I just laughed out of like, this isn't real. I mean, this can't be real. It's just was such a surreal experience.
Yeah, and I have to also stay on the topic with watermelons.
Of course.
Because
we can spend a whole episode talking about watermelons
Yeah.
and how they taste in this state of awareness.
I'm embarrassed to say it, but during one of these experiences, when I was in this state of awareness, I think I ate 3 whole watermelons by myself.
I think it was more.
Yeah.
I think we had, it could be, 3 watermelons maybe.
Yeah, I think it was 3.
Yeah.
3. But I just explain what it's like. For instance, eating the watermelon. First of all, just looking at it it's just an experience in itself. To watch something, organic, and it's so beautiful, and then kind of slow ritual, carve out a spoon and put in your mouth, and it really focuses on the taste, and it's so sweet. And it's never like that when you eat in a regular life. You kind of always going somewhere and something like that. But when you're in this state of awareness, you appreciate everything. Not only the taste, but looking at the food before you eat it. The actual movement to your mouth. Everything is perfect and blissful. And it's quite remarkable that it's possible to have an everyday life like that. I mean, this is the state of awareness that I'm convinced that people who have reached a very high level of awareness are in constantly without the help of psychedelics. Yeah. So, but it's been a bliss to have the glimpses of it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you bring up the topic of eating food and being present.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something I think we're really bad at
Yeah.
when we're in our everyday life, because you're eating and you're just trying to get rid of the hunger, and
Yeah.
you don't really, when you eat, you don't really taste it. Just
No, and I think these kind of experiences like this one really made me think of how important it is to be present in what you're doing.
yeah,
And you can actually have similar experiences without psychedelics if you're actually focusing on your food, or even, taking a shower and really feeling how good it feels when the water, like,
Yeah.
or taking a bath or everything like that.
yeah. One thing that I think that I enjoy doing that has helped me, that I enjoy more after these experiences,
Yeah.
is swimming.
Yeah.
Just being underwater and feeling the weightlessness of just being underwater and feeling the water through your fingers when you swim, and
Yeah.
it's a nice experience.
I totally agree. And for some reason, after all of these experiences, when I take a bath, especially in the ocean, if I jump into the water, I have the feeling that water is like consciousness in a way. It's so strange feeling. I don't know why this idea popped up right now, but I had that experience quite a few times after having these experiences.
Yeah.
And it's, you kind of learn how to appreciate things in everyday life when you had these kind of experiences.
Yeah. But if we get back to the experience that we had, I just remember looking at outside and looking at the beautiful sky, and one thing I could sense, or just almost see as well, is that it felt like it wasn't real.
Yeah.
Like it was a creation of sort. So just basically, like, it was like looking at a drawing.
Yeah.
The whole scenery just looked like a drawing. It didn't look real.
Yeah. And that is also one thing that was perhaps the strongest impression for me during this experience. Was that very same experience, but even more extreme perhaps. Because I was standing by the window and watching out, and suddenly everything turned into energy.
Yeah.
And I could see it visually. I was looking outside the window, I could see the ocean and the mountains, and it was like everything was built out of small, thin golden threads of golden energy.
Yeah.
And I could see it at the same time as I could see the picture, the landscape. And it was really strange. And it actually reminds me of Martinez that I talked about in the first episode.
Yeah.
This Danish guy who I believe was a self-realized person, a very high state of awareness. And he described the same thing actually, that he had an experience where he could see how everything was made up of thin golden strings.
Yeah.
And I could also feel intuitively during watching this that this energy was streaming out of myself. And what I was watching was actually an illusion created by myself, by my own consciousness, that everything was consciousness, and it was my own consciousness. So that we are living inside a sort of illusion that we are ourselves creating. And this is also what I have studied before.
Yeah.
And we're going to deepen this discussion a bit more later on.
Yeah.
But it was so I actually knew about this in theory before I had this experience. But when I saw it, it became very obvious. And I could see the energy and how it streamed out of myself. It was my own consciousness. So I had an idea right then.
Yeah.
And I felt, okay, I am actually creating my external experiences from my own being, my own consciousness. And I had this idea, perhaps I can influence my surroundings with my will. Because I could see that it came from me.
Yeah.
So I started to.
You felt like a connectivity that you are one with everything around.
I could feel how I was one with this energy.
Yeah.
All this energy I saw
Mm.
was part of me. It came from me.
Yeah.
It was the same thing as me.
Mm.
We were one.
Yeah.
And I could feel this very strongly. And so I decided to try to influence my experience. So I held up my hand and focused on a point a few centimeters above my palm.
Mm.
And just focused on that point and tried to gather energy there.
Okay.
And what happened was that I could suddenly see a point above my palm, and the surroundings around the point kind of warped,
Okay.
like a convex glass or something.
Yeah.
And that was very strange. I don't know what I did
Mm-hmm.
or what happened, but that was the experience. Then I felt, okay, I could actually do something to influence my surroundings. And I tried to, well, perhaps I can manifest objects out of thin air or bend objects. But I tried that and did not succeed at all. And I realized that, okay, even though I am actually creating this, at this point, I don't know how, and I don't have the ability to do it consciously. It happens anyway. I don't know how. Well, nowadays I do understand how, but not back then. So I had that realization, okay, this comes from me, but I do not yet have the power to make this world change after my wishes.
I think now when you talk about it, I kind of remember that Dennis McKenna and Terence McKenna experienced a similar thing when they went down to South America and encountered mushrooms for the very first time. I think they what's it called, that famous trip that they did to, was it Mexico, Brazil?
I don't remember the name of the location.
No, it's what happens that they
La
went
Chuera, perhaps.
Yeah,
Something like that.
Yeah. So they went down there, I think, and they were eating mushrooms for 2 or 3 weeks constantly.
Yeah, about, if I remember correctly, 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah. And they also talked about the idea of being able to manifest things by will. Of course, they weren't able to do it, but they had the sensation of being able to do it.
Yeah, you kind of knew that it's possible. And I had the realization it is most definitely possible. It's just that we are not yet ready for it, or we have not learned the skills.
Okay.
We are an evolving consciousness, and we have not reached a point where we have learned how to master matter with our mind. At least not you and me, and the majority of people. Perhaps I do believe that there are people who can do this, even today. Perhaps such as great yogis and people like that.
But it's still, I mean, we get like a delayed, if you think about ideas.
Yeah.
That's one way of having a thought and creating something. Of course, we do it with material way, in a different way, perhaps but think about it and it appears. But you get the idea and you create it.
Yeah.
So you have the same principle, but it's a bit slower in the reality.
Yeah, and also something that I learned during a later experience, and I'm probably going to talk more about it later on, is that the thing that is actually stopping us from being able to do it is our own doubts.
Okay.
Because we don't believe it's possible.
All right. So we need to start believing in it.
We need to start believing in our own abilities and divinity, basically.
Okay.
But I'm jumping ahead now. That was a later message.
Yeah, but if we go back to these golden threads that you talked about, I have actually had experienced the same thing, but didn't have any prior knowledge about it. I remember just during this experience, I think it might have been the same experience,
this very journey.
Yeah, the same journey.
I do believe so as well, because I remember that when I told you about this, you said you had same experience, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So I just remember looking like just focusing my sight on one object.
Yeah.
And when I did that, everything just faded away. I was looking at the trees and the sky, and when I was just focusing on a single point, everything else vanished.
Yeah.
It's kind of like dimmed out,
Mhm.
and behind it, it was just white.
Yeah.
And all I could see in this white background was golden lights connecting everything.
I had that very experience as well. Earlier on, I think. I don't know for sure. Perhaps it was later. I was out in the woods.
Yeah.
And I was feeling how my energy was rising very quickly. I almost forgot about this actually. And what I experienced was that the world kind of faded away gradually into white.
Yeah.
And eventually I was standing there in complete whiteness. And then I kind of snapped back to it. And you were there as well. And you also vanished.
Okay.
It was like a gradual out-of-body experience or whatever.
Okay.
I actually forgot about that experience.
Yeah, it's exactly as you explained. You could see everything just fading away.
Yeah.
Like it was just disappearing.
Yeah.
And behind it was all this light, golden threads just connected through everything.
Yeah.
Like everything was connected through these golden threads, if you will.
It's quite remarkable. And even though, as I said, you had no prior knowledge of this,
No,
while I had, but we hadn't discussed this.
not the threads. No.
So it's quite remarkable that you had the same experience.
Yeah.
Because in my case, I had read Martinus material, so you might have said, well, perhaps you hallucinated this because you had read about it prior to this experience, but that was not the case with you. And we had very, very similar experiences. And I don't even think that matters, because when you have the experience, it's so profound and real. I find it very improbable that it's actually an hallucination.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't had experience, I can understand if people think, all right, they were hallucinating and you just saw something and it was probably not real. But it's not so much the things that you see and experience, it's the feeling as well to it.
Yeah.
Because behind all this, when you saw everything, how it was just connected, everything, the whole reality was just one.
You feel it with your whole being.
Yeah, like you feel the connectiveness.
You feel it and you know it.
Yeah, it's not like you watching a separate object. You're actually being it yourself.
And another thing, I think we mentioned this before, is that these feelings that you experience are completely out of your frames of reference that you have in your normal life.
Yeah.
You have never experienced something similar to this, not even remotely similar. So, and it makes sense. Sometimes I think that if it would be some kind of hallucination, it should be connected to your known database, you know.
Yeah.
But it's not. And if it's not connected to your references that you know about, I think the experience should perhaps be more chaotic than actually making complete sense. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So for me, it's not that this is being hallucination. It's just that's the least probable explanation to me.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I have had perhaps not as strong experience, but with meditation.
Yeah.
Without any use of anything, just sitting down in quiet meditation and focusing on the wholeness. I have actually had smaller experiences of experiencing being connected with everything, or being the wholeness, being in everything.
Same here. I could actually tell you about an experience that I had many years ago, way before this all happened. I describe it in my book, The Illusion.
Yeah.
I made a guided meditation, with an audio tape. That was very powerful. And in the end of the meditation, I went into such a deep state that I felt how my body dissolved into energy.
Yeah.
And it was a very powerful experience, at least back then. Not compared to what we have experienced now, but...
Yeah.
And this was, I don't know, perhaps 10, 12 years ago.
Mm.
And then I tried this meditation many more times, but as we talked about in the previous episode, I had expectations of what would happen.
Yeah.
And therefore it did not happen.
Yeah. It's kind of when you just release all expectations, that's you can.
Yeah,
get
I think you
experience.
have to be able to reach these states of awareness, you need to let go of the mind, and expectations are a part of the mind.
Yeah, but I think it's people who argue that we are not connected in any way, we're separate beings having separate experiences. This whole thing is just fully automated creation.
Yeah.
I find it. I don't know how to explain the feeling of feeling connected with the universe, the feeling of wholeness. If that was the fact that we
Yeah.
are completely separated and there's nothing to it.
How can you have that experience? Yeah.
Yeah.
You cannot.
Yeah, that's if
Well-
someone has an answer for it, I would
Yeah.
really like to hear it.
Perhaps we should kind of connect the dots a little bit about all the things that we have discussed.
Yeah.
We are talking about the external world being an illusion and divine self and things like that.
Yeah.
Perhaps you should make clear that from our studies and experiences, what we're talking about here is actually that everything is consciousness.
Yeah.
And the only thing that truly exists is one single consciousness. And this consciousness are you, me, and everyone else.
Mm.
And we have forgotten our true nature, that what we really are.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for this that we'll discuss later on. So, but just to keep to the basics, that everything is one.
Yeah.
And everything is created out of this consciousness as an actual illusion.
Mm.
What we experience as real is actually an illusion inside our consciousness. And there's an explanation to why this is and how it works, but we're not going to dive into that right now. But this is basically what Buddhism and Hinduism says, that everything is one.
Yeah.
One consciousness. And the only thing is that we are not aware of this.
Mm.
And we are, in a way, caught inside an idea.
Yeah, and I think the Buddhist tradition, if you will, is not so well accepted or well known in the Western world, because we have the Christian explanation of reality, if you will,
Yeah.
or science. That's the basic two, and there's
Yeah.
nothing between them as we see it.
Yeah,
in
and
the West.
this one consciousness is what we refer to when we talk about God.
Yeah.
It's not a Christian God.
Yeah.
And the reason I like to use the word God is that it possesses the abilities that we usually give God,
Mm.
almighty, all loving, and all the things. And
Yeah.
but the main difference here is that it's not an external thing. It's your own self.
Yeah.
That is this divine God. We're just not aware of it yet. But there are other parts of this consciousness that is aware of it
Mm.
right now and are directing this illusion.
Yeah, so I think that especially in the West, we have when we say the word God, or what we try to explain as being the whole universe or
Yeah.
one consciousness.
Yeah.
The idea of God in the Western world through Christianity is that God is something up there, external from ourselves,
Yeah.
who's constantly looking at us, judging us, and will do horrible things if we do horrible things.
And most people today have realized there are kind of big holes in Christianity and big
sure.
problems. And also the Christian God as portrayed are not always that loving as they claim him to be.
Yeah.
So I believe that a lot of people kind of have a resistance to the word God.
Yes.
But I do like to use the idea of God, because that's actually what it's all about.
Mm.
But it's not the Christian God. It's your own divinity that you're not yet knowing. You have not connected to it yet.
Yeah.
But it is almighty, if you will. It's love is everything.
Mm.
It's very powerful. We felt the power of it,
Yeah.
but it's just it's a consciousness,
Yeah. And what it creates, it can be
and
anything.
that consciousness creates everything,
Yeah.
the whole universe, and it is everything. But the main difference here is you are that.
Yeah. I think
Consciousness.
that's what has been so forgotten or missed in the Christianity is
Yeah.
that you are not it.
Exactly.
You get the feeling of God being something else, but
Yeah.
you are not it.
And this is in the Hindu tradition,
Mm.
they do talk about this, but there are problems with Hinduism as well because it's so clouded with stories of Krishna and Ganesha and all that,
Yeah.
but they're just symbols. For many Hindus, they are taking it literally
Mm.
as well.
Yeah.
But if you go to the advanced level of Hinduism, that's just kind of symbolism. And
Mm.
the pure Hinduism, if you want to call it that, is quite straightforward actually.
Yeah.
And I think Buddhism was Buddha's way of kind of cleansing away all that external stuff on Hinduism.
Yeah.
And they don't even talk about God. They talk about, this state of being.
Yeah. And this,
Reaching a state of being. And I think that's true, but I'm not really afraid of using the term God either.
Mm.
I feel comfortable in using the highest state of awareness for that is being God.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, but it's not something that you find out there. It's something that you find in yourself.
Yeah. And it doesn't really matter what you call it. You can
No.
call it pure consciousness or the absolute, or if
Yeah.
it feels more comfortable. That's what we're talking about in.
Mm. Yeah.
But I actually had, and I also jumping ahead now, but
Yeah.
during one of my experiences, when I had contact with this high consciousness that we call God, it said that's what it's all about. Don't be afraid to use this word.
Yeah.
So I decided to use it.
Yeah, I think I think we I would like to see that the word gets the proper meaning to
a
it.
kind of a renaissance of
Yeah.
the meanings connected to the word.
Yeah. So if we go back to the experience of seeing this and feeling the wholeness, it's at least at this point for me, I felt like, because I wasn't really convinced. Well, I guess I kind of got convinced of a God existing, if you
Yeah.
will, but feeling it in myself.
Yeah.
But it was that the experience that I talked about in the third episode,
Yeah.
and now getting to be in it for such a long time,
Yeah.
we really got the possibility to explore it,
Yeah.
to be in it, to be this state of awareness and just do everyday things in it.
I do think that what we had during the Starways experience that we described in episode 3 was that we had a glimpse of our own divinity,
Yeah.
but not a complete experience, because we felt that we were one with everything. We felt this tremendous amount of love
Yeah.
and bliss, but one thing was lacking, and that was the understanding of what this was.
Yeah.
Self-knowledge. And it's a reason why we never had that, because that's the kind of goal that's why we're here, to realize what we are. And if we had experience, then we wouldn't be talking about this now, because then we would be self-realized. So
Yeah.
it wasn't a complete experience of our true self. It was a taste of it, I
Yeah.
think.
I feel like the Starways experience was like they open us up to this higher level state of awareness.
Yeah.
Quite strong.
Yeah.
And just open it up for a small second and close the door again.
Yeah, and they left out one part,
Yeah.
I think, and that's the understanding part, the knowing part of what you really are.
Yeah, and I think that's perhaps was on purpose. I mean, they
Oh,
open it
yeah.
up and you get to see it. And once they close the door, you kind of think about, how can I get back
Most definitely, it
What
was
was
on
that?
purpose.
Yeah.
That was something I was told later on, and that's because the reason is for us to discover is to by ourselves.
there? Yeah, I mean, I guess could be like a motivation of trying to get
Oh.
back there. Just
A very strong
get a glimpse of
motivation.
it. Yeah, very,
I
very
would
strong
say.
one.
Yeah, because when you had the glimpse,
Yeah,
there's no way you can just forget about it. You
Mm.
want to dedicate your life to reach this state of awareness.
yeah,
And to reach this state of awareness is not through psychedelics, it's through spiritual practices
Yeah.
like meditation, mantras, and things like that. So that's something that we're also going to talk more about.
yeah. Or
Yeah.
you're just your being.
Yeah.
That's what you work with.
Yeah, working on how to be, to
What you
just
really
be,
are. Yeah.
to
And-
find your own inner being.
Yeah, and I think I mean, I really urge people who watch this episode to get their own experiences, get your own glimpses, because those glimpses will say more than we will be able to tell in
Yeah.
10,000 episodes. Just one small glimpse of this that we have experienced. We want you to
Yeah.
know about the glimpses.
Yeah, and of course they're not necessary in any way, but I don't regret having them.
No, well, it's not for everyone. We all have different paths
Yeah.
to go there to reach our destination, but I think the destination, the road that we have chosen is quite a good one.
And they are there for those who want
Yeah.
to have them. And it's
Sure.
not that hard.
Yeah, and I think with the last experience that we had in the journey was instead of opening up the door like this,
Yeah.
and just having a really powerful experience, we kind of like got to experience a higher level than our normal self, a higher level of awareness.
Yeah.
That we were just able to be in for 4 or 5 hours or something like that. And it was really the first time we were, or at least for me, where I was constantly in this state of awareness.
And I think the biggest payoff with having these kind of experiences is that you now know how they feel.
Yeah.
So when you meditate, you can find that feeling and go after it in another way
Yeah.
and go into that state of awareness much easier than before.
Yeah. And I think also just how you are supposed to be in everyday life as
Yeah.
well. Loving towards others, just being non-egoistical, just being
Yeah.
in the present. You get to experience how it is to be like that.
Yeah.
And when you have the experience, that becomes the motivation to be it in your everyday life.
Yeah.
So it was nice.
It was very nice, and this episode was pretty much the intention with this episode was to dive in to some extent to the theory, because in the next episode that's when I think the major breakthrough. I mean, Starways was a breakthrough. This was the major breakthrough, well, at least on a personal level.
Yeah. So we're gonna try to present some more theoretical knowledge that we have attained, but we're going to talk about one experience in particular
Yeah.
as well.
In the next episode, we're going to talk about a very powerful experience that was a real game changer, and that experience alone is the reason why we're sitting here now.
Yeah.
So you don't want to miss that out. And after that experience, we started to receive a lot of information.
Yeah.
That are really cool. And
So we're just getting started.
yeah. All of these experiences up to this point, I feel they were appetizers.
Yeah.
Motivational experiences.
Most
Then
definitely.
came the learning experience,
Yeah.
if you would like to.
So I think
it like
we end here for this episode.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a few minutes shorter than the other ones, but
That's
we
fine.
want to keep it the next episode. We don't want to spoil too much in this one.
Yeah.
So be sure to go to maldorma.com. There you have all the previous episode if you want to catch up with those, and all the future episodes will be posted there as well. You can find us on Facebook and on Instagram and on Twitter.
Yeah.
If you want to follow us on social media. I strongly recommend that you pick up the book Illusion that Magnus has written.
Yeah, I have it right here actually.
Yeah.
This is a book where I describe all the spiritual principles and theory, quite advanced theory, that I have attained through studies and in particular through the experiences. So I go very deeply into the experiences that we are going to talk about in future episodes in particular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm also writing a book called Stepping into the Unknown, which will be released later this year or beginning of next year. It's just a different perspective on all these experiences that I have had as well. So be sure to check that out when it becomes available. And I just want to mention that we are also working on a future book.
Yeah, and that book is going to be our major work.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much to say about it, but it will cover
the title.
What?
Yes, the title.
No, I don't want to give away the title
Okay.
actually. Not yet.
All right.
Someone might steal it.
Oh,
No, I was kidding. Well, it's going to be it's going to explain pretty much all of the spiritual principles, how consciousness works, how the illusion is built, all of that material. It's partly in my book and in your book, but the third book will be, I don't know when it will be out.
could be many years.
Yeah, it
We're
could be many years.
co-writing it, and we just want it to be the great, really good book. So we're gonna take a lot of time with it.
We're starting to build up expectations.
Yeah. It's
now.
good to do it well in advance. But anyways, all jokes aside, now I think we end it here.
Yeah.
So thank you for watching this episode, and be sure to check out the next ones as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.